he shook some trees, he shook some ground. In that point, European Union has received a big hit in the image in Serbia. I'm not stating in this sense Western Balkans, because I believe that the rest of the Western Balkans, the narrative was different. It was not like that, but in Serbia it was. Let's say that it was where it was even before COVID-19. So it has not had a lot of bad press, bad impact that will stay for a long term. But definitely from that statement, that from some other examples, it's obvious that Serbia is still balancing on a couple of chairs, and Serbia is still on the path of European integration. And Serbia, I hope, still wants to become part of the European Union, but we are still keeping cooperation with the Eastern partners. Either that is Russia, that has been a traditional partner of Serbia, but now that's shifting a little bit, and now we are more in favor of China. That is something that shows that Serbian foreign policy is a bit schizophrenic, but still some analytics show that may not be as bad thing for Serbia, because Serbia is keeping a lot of doors open, looking both at the east and at the west, because in this time of uncertainty, you never know who can be the friend that you need.
Yeah, and also there is something that I really don't understand. EU is worried about Chinese influence in the Balkans. And I know EU has incorporation with China, and I think that Germany is seen as one of the most vulnerable EU countries to Chinese influence. Don't you think that that's interesting? Why Chinese presence in the region be a potential obstacle to integration? Why EU thinks that?
We can talk about numbers, and I can say you that we cannot compare the level of investment of China in Western Europe, so France, Germany, now Great Britain, United Kingdom is not part of the EU anymore, but again, a large portion of Chinese investments is going there. And when you compare that level of investments to investments in the Western Balkans, it's not even on the same level. It's not even the same league. A lot more Chinese investments are going west, not in the Western Balkans. And that is the first thing. But I would like to stop here for a moment and just to say one thing. When in majority of the cases, when people are talking about Chinese influence, in this case in the Western Balkans, they are coming with precondition. Chinese influence bad. That is the precondition that a lot of discourse is being held on. So basically, we are talking about Chinese influence, something that is bad in nature. I would put a question mark there, of course, and I'm not stating that we should not be cautious when establishing cooperation with country that has not been classified as a democracy, with country that has a lot of problem with human rights internally, that has autocratic government, autocratic leaders. Of course, that we should be cautious. But basically, if we are talking about cooperation with China, there are some undoubted benefits coming from it. And that is something that Serbian politicians are really aware of, and that Serbian politicians are really doing that to promote in their own favor. For example, a lot of projects that have been finalized in Serbia, infrastructural projects that have been finalized in Serbia in a couple of last years, were backed by the Chinese loans. Of course, that common people, citizens of Serbia do not know that China has not came here and built the highway with its own money and with its own workers, because they are seeing new highway. They do not know that Serbia will have to repay that money back to China. It's not an investment, it's a loan. A lot of investments that have been presented by the Serbian officials were actually loans. If you're talking about highway, if you're talking about Belgrade-Budapest Railroad, if we are talking about thermal power plant. On the other side, we have to admit that there have been increased level of the Chinese investments also. Foreign direct investments, Chinese ventures, Chinese capital coming to Serbia, that has undoubtedly is beneficial for Serbia. And we have to look at two sides of that picture. Potentially, there are some bad circumstances that can come out of cooperation with China. Yes, we have to be cautious as a Western Balkan. Yes, we have to be smart when signing agreements. We have to avoid debt traps like some other countries have been unsuccessful in the past to do. But undoubtedly, undoubtedly there is some of the new workplaces, there is some of the new highways, some old factories are starting to work again because Chinese have purchased them, and Serbian politicians are really good in promoting those. That is actually what is not scaring, that's making European Union concerned. Have that cooperation with Serbian government, Serbian politicians have come that close that tomorrow, if Serbia becomes a part of the EU, could China politically influence some of the EU decision-making process if Serbia becomes the part of the EU? I'm always stating that China is not on the way of Serbia becoming the EU member. I believe that it would be in Chinese interest for Serbia to become the part of the European Union, because now they, with Chinese factories doing business here in Serbia, they would have open a road to European Union market. They would have lower costs and etc. etc.
I see. And my last question will be about Turkey and China. How do you evaluate these two countries in the Balkans? I think they are investing pretty much in the same areas. Do you think they are in cooperation or competition?
Well, I would look at those two actors as a parallel process going on. For Western Balkan countries, it's good to have several strong foreign actors interested in the region, because that means that competition will be good. That means that we can choose between better product. The question is, are there any conflict zones for those countries for them to be concerned about each other? I honestly believe that is not the case for Turkey and for China in the Western Balkans, because traditionally Turkey has had quite good relations with Bosnia and Herzegovina, with Serbia, especially with some parts of Serbia. It has developing relations with Kosovo. And as I said previously, the interesting thing is, for example, Turkey has a good relations with Bosnia and Herzegovina, but Turkey is closer to the Federation and China is closer to the Republika Srpska. Turkey has a good relations with Serbia, with special interest in Sanjak region because of the Bosniaks Muslim minority, and there is a lot of other parts of Serbia for China to be present in. Turkey has developing cooperation with Kosovo. China doesn't have diplomatic relations with Kosovo at all and is not economically present. So I believe that now at this point they are not competing, they are just doing their own jobs and their own business, looking their own business in the separate parts of the same region.
Dear Stefan, thank you once again for participating in my BalkanPod. So dear BalkanPod listeners, see you next week, same day and same time.